on this episode of AV Week, the benefits of a utilitarian UC appliance, how 5G, Wi-Fi 6, and IoT will impact the industry, and connecting young people with AV. All that and more, next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 418, recorded Friday, August 23rd, 2019. Stupid Proof.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Buy-In and by Christie Digital and by Crestron.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, I guess I'll do closest to farthest away, Mr. Jeremy Caldera, whose birthday was just last week, from IAS. Welcome, sir.
Hello, glad to be here.
And happy belated birthday, sir.
Well, thank you.
Also with us, I'm not quite sure which is farther, Idaho or Jersey, so let's go with Jersey. Mr. Clint Hoffman from Kramer Electronics. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Oh, thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Mark Lavecchia, who I have not had on in a very long time, but Mark's a regular over on Steve Greenblatt's State of Control. He is with BMA Software. Welcome, sir. Absolutely. So let's kick this off, guys. We've got a number of stories here. Some of them kind of evergreen, but the first one I want to kick off here is from our buddy David Danto. David hosts a show for us called Connected. He recently moved to Poly after being a consultant for a number of years. He writes about the end for purpose-built collaboration devices. And so understand that David had been talking about the UCC space for a lot of years. He's a part of the IMCCA. He's done a number of sessions. He has a new kind of a get-together. Did one in New York. He's doing one in Silicon Valley this fall, getting together the UC folks, movers and shakers, and the designers. So the fact that he writes a piece about the end of purpose-built collaboration devices already grabbed my attention. So I'm going to read a quote from here, quote unquote. The growing trend of a PC in the room or laptop that runs on one of a myriad collaboration software solutions on the market, as opposed to a purpose-built device specifically designed and optimized for the experience. The growing trend here is the fact that is going away. Danto goes on to identify a number of, generically, he doesn't call out anybody specifically, but generically, these types of devices that are going away, these purpose-driven, these Unitarian pieces. Jeremy, I'll start with you on this. When you guys go in to design a system today, whether that is a huddle space, whether that is a full-fledged conference room with the big boardroom table and 15 chairs, when you guys go in there and you're talking to your clients, what is the feedback you're getting from what it is they're telling you they need both today and possibly even maybe a year into the future?
Well, they're getting away from, as far as collaboration goes and conferencing, they're getting away from hard codecs in my experience. That's first and foremost. Now, they're still there, right? There's still a few instances where we have them, but pretty much it's, hey, this department uses Teams, this department uses Zoom, this department uses this, and then, by the way, this department uses ClickShare, and this department uses Mersive, and this department uses, whatever. So we need to just be completely agnostic, right? So we don't need a Cisco or a Polycom, and we don't need something that is necessarily, Teams certified, as long as it's Teams certified and does ABCD. Right, and all these other ones too. So we just see just the wide gamut, and that's where I'm seeing the trend going. Is just this whole idea of anything, right? You just need to be versatile, and it has to work, right? None of this. We need to load 100 drivers, and we need to, do all these other testing and whatnot. It's got to work. It's got to work with anything that we could potentially add. That's my favorite. We could potentially get something else. We don't know what that is, but it's got to work with that. Right, that's my favorite comment that I love to get. So, of course, my response is always like, "Sure, we got it." In the meantime, I'm crossing my fingers that it's nothing that I know doesn't work with this stuff. So,
well, Clint, one of the things that Danto brings up towards the end of the article is the fact that there are use cases for those Unitarian, right? For systems that do just one thing. So when you're talking to folks like Jeremy, how do you advise them to say, okay, you know what? Yes, there are absolutely use cases for something that can do anything for anybody, right? You can to use Danto's quote, watch cat videos and do video collaboration. But there's also these devices that you might want that just do one thing.
Yeah, and he actually wrote this very cunningly because, he's burying his true point, which his true point is you should buy a purpose-built device if you're a Fortune 500 company who worries about security and making sure that the device does what it's supposed to do when it's supposed to do. His last paragraph says, however, if you're in a Fortune 500 enterprise and you want to install and not worry about a fortified, solid device that its only purpose is the completion of successful video conferences, then go with a purpose-built device. I kind of truncated that at the end there, but the headline is he's saying this is what everybody's talking about, and this is where the world is heading and courting everybody. But frankly speaking, you should just get a purpose-built device. So it's clever how he wrote that, and I happen to agree with it.
Mark, when you're talking with folks, and again, Mark's a programmer. His company, AVNation Software, they make one of my favorite people in the world are controller programmers, because I used to be one. You guys are able to look at these systems from a kind of a holistic standpoint because you're kind of making sure everybody kind of talks together. Does it matter if it's a Unitarian device or if it's this multi-use system that can kind of do everything when it comes to making sure that the systems are able to talk to each other and be controlled?
If it does matter, it doesn't come across that way. And what I mean by that is we strictly program in the commercial world. Okay. So we do everything from huddle spaces all the way up to 8-way, 10-way divisible ballrooms. We always touch all of these individual codecs and these wireless communication devices all over the place. And everybody is dropping the codec. Everybody. I'm sure there's a place for it, and I'm sure that they will continue to sell. But I wake up every day grateful that I am not a codec salesperson, because we watch all the drawings come in now with a dedicated PC and a couple of cameras in a room, and it's all soft. With immersive or click, none of that. That's interchangeable. Nobody really. The only time people care about that is when it doesn't work. But they bring these soft codecs in because they're dummy-proof. Zoom, dummy-proof. You can share content. You can bring people in. You can record. You can do all the things you want to do. And guess what? If we want to upgrade it, there's a firmware upgrade. It doesn't break the rest of the room into pieces. I'm probably not making a popular statement, but we just did a job up in Northern California. We just finished it 2 months ago. And they had hard codecs, no name necessary, in probably 50 rooms. And they just pulled them all out. And they put a touch panel in.
Shut up.
For Zoom. We're going into this system, we're pulling out the codecs, and they're adding a control system that has a Zoom mode in it. And that's it. You want to do a video call, you push the button, you go over there, and that's it. And that's what I've been seeing more than anything.
Stupid proof. That was the key word that you used. Stupid proof.
Yeah, and so how do you back that real quickly is what the other trend that we see is when we're doing a user interface for a room, that people say, I don't care how the room operates or anything, but I need this to look and act just like a Cisco. I need the Cisco look and feel because they really got that down really well. They have a good user interface. So I may not even have that codec in here, but I need that look and feel in here. And then once you switch over to these soft codecs, it's completely dummy proof. Anybody can go in and make a call. You can do this with me, and you're not sitting there doing my audio check on my, you know what I mean? So it's been very dramatic on our side over the last, I'd say, 2 years. And lastly, the pedal's on the metal right now.
Wow. That's fine. I will say that it's fascinating that you bring up the Cisco code interface. Actually, one of the jobs that Jeremy and I did together it was my first time that I had ever had a client ask specifically for a Cisco interface, and we went through the process and got it all down. But that client specifically asked for a Cisco interface. They were a huge Cisco house, and they wanted their control systems to emulate that, even if it wasn't a Cisco. So yeah, it is a nice interface. All right, guys. Next story we're going to hit here actually comes to us from Commercial Integrator, and Alan Braun writes about his predictions for Internet of Things, Wi-Fi, and 5G. Alan goes on to talk about how the IoT and 5G are going to kind of revolutionize the industry. Alan's somebody that's been around a long time. He is an AVIXA lifetime education. He has a lifetime education award. He's been teaching a long time in the industry. A lot of respect for him. Clint, we'll start with you on this. When it comes to some of the things that Alan talks about, specifically about the IoT, that's an area that folks in this industry have argued about for years now. I mean, we're in 2019. We've been talking about this for at least 5 or 6 years. Where are we going to go when it comes to IoT in the commercial AV space?
So I think, and Alan mentions this in the article, it's about the data. Collecting data and then being able to use that data to make better decisions down the line is inherently what IT managers do. And we're now marketing and selling more and more to the IT manager, IT department in the Pro AV industry. It's not typical that you would expect Pro AV stuff to give you data. So this is not something that's happening at breakneck speed. But if you can put a sensor or connect any kind of a device that will collect that will trigger the control system to know something into the control system, then there's so much data we can gather. If you're building 100 conference rooms and you built 100 conference rooms, then you're going to build another 100, and nobody ever uses the Blu-ray player in the room. Well, you're not going to put a Blu-ray player in the next 100 because you've learned that conclusively. And that's a very simple example of that. But he's right. The more data we can collect in the future, the more value we're going to have in terms of being able to offer the end user, and then also turn this into a kind of a managed service.
Mark, when it comes to both IoT and Alan writes about Wi-Fi 6, which is the next generation of wireless access. Take those two together when you're talking about control systems and the abilities that you guys are going to have here in the next year to 3 years. When it comes to using that data to push out notifications, let people know kind of in real time where their systems are and the health of those systems.
Well, to be fair, it's probably one of the least used portions of our business to begin with, is collecting that data. A lot of people set up for it, and a lot of people prepare for it, and they'll set up asset management software that we can take a look at what's going on. But it's not as embraced in our business as it should be. And I think that the technology is moving faster than the acceptance of this data collection. This data collection is huge. And I think the challenge that we face with it in our side of the business, not the IT side, what we tell is we're counting on salespeople and engineers in the field to talk about things that are not really 100%. They're out there to collect the data and do things, but I don't know that they are as marketed as well as they can be. So what happens is it gets put to the shelf when you're trying to close the job. But when we have customers that use that data collection, it's very purposeful. What I mean by that is we have a customer on the East Coast who will build 4 or 5 different rooms, and each room will have different components in it. And they do this primarily to collect, this is kind of what Clint was saying, they're collecting the data on what people are using, but more importantly, what they're not using. And then they're planning for the next 4 or 5 years, we're not going to use this codec because nobody prefers this, or we're not going to use this wireless. So that data becomes really critical to what they're doing. The problem is that's the exception and not the rule. You don't have people doing this on a regular basis. So that technology, whether you go to 6G or whatever it is, it's in my mind, that's a side thing because we're not putting it to use the way that it is right now as well as we could. And it's got to catch up at some point. I think it will. But we're struggling. Our industry struggles with this even after all these years.
Why do you think that is? Because, and don't misunderstand, my first control system, sounds like a Fisher-Price toy. My first control system had an asset management component to it. It was not nearly as robust as what we have now. Right? Understand that. But it had the capabilities of, as a tech manager, which is what I was at the time, had the ability to tell me lamp hour life, had the ability to tell me when a projector was no longer communicating. In other words, when it got stolen, right? This is all through 232 and through the network. But this was elementary stuff in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. That technology has evolved greatly since then.
Greatly.
Why haven't we embraced it more?
My answer could be different from a lot of people's. My answer is because we're relying on salespeople within our business that don't know how to sell it.
Okay.
They just simply don't know how to sell it. And in our business right now, I can throw a rock and hit an AV integrator from my patio. Okay, they're all over the place. Whether they're trunk slammers or they're big integrators, they're all over. And getting an order is really hard right now with margin. Okay, so what do? Well, I'm gonna not try to sell more of this. I want to get this order in, and then maybe I'll bring in this asset management stuff later on. What we do is we work with our integrators. We lay it in the background anyway, so they can go in and open it up later. But I've always said that it's begun and ended with the integrator sales people. They just don't want to, because they can't speak about it as quickly and as purposefully as they should.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Tim, if I may, there's an old Far Side comic that I always use in relationship to the pro AV industry, and it's a picture of a dog at like in a circus setting up on a high wire, and he's juggling cats, and he's got a vase on his head, and he's doing a hula hoop at the same time. And the caption was, "Suddenly Rex realized he was an old dog, and this is a new trick." That's the pro AV industry. We're a bunch of old dogs, and we do what we're comfortable with.
It just takes time. That cartoon, Clint. Old dog, new trick. All right.
Yeah, Google Far Side.
Caldera, you're the youngest
dog
here. So whether it's 5G or that's the question I was going to ask you is what impact. And the one thing about 5G that Alan writes about is the fact that it gives it's greater speed, lower latency, and you can connect more devices to it, which gives us in the industry that are sometimes we rely on wireless access, a little bit more flexibility when we're designing systems. But whether it's IoT or 5G, what are the impacts of these newer technologies?
Well, as long as they're reliable, the impacts are huge, right? I mean, we're gonna start to see just everything grow by leaps and bounds. And this whole 5G thing, I'm interested by, because everybody was like, "Oh, I remember when 3G was a huge thing, and I loved it." Then we had LTE, right? Now we get 4. Now, whenever my phone kicks over to 3G, I feel like I'm in the Stone Age, right? Which is just unbelievable. This whole 5G thing is going to be fantastic, but it's all going to come down to reliability, right?
Correct.
As far as IoT goes, I think that you're right. We got a lot of data that we can collect, and I think the manufacturers and all the software and everything is giving us more data than we know what to do with. And that's the key, is no matter how much data we collect and what we're going to do with it in this IoT world and everything's high speed, it's how do we interpret it? What do we do with it, right? I mean, that's the long and short of it. What are we going to do with this data, and how are we going to use this as a customer, as an end user, as an integrator, as whatever, right? Because I think that's going to be the key, because we've talked about this for a long time, that traditional AV integration is not dying, it's dead, right? And everybody has to get on board with this. And for me, I know that one thing I'm trying to ask myself right now is like you said, how do we sell it? Okay, because it's traditional AV Salesforce. How do we sell managed services? How do we sell managed services that include all of this data analysis? And more importantly, how do we make it easy to understand for both the client and whoever else, right? So taking the data, it's like the world of control system programming. I'll equate it to that in a very butchered analogy here, okay? Right? We make a control system so that the end user finds the system easy to understand, hopefully, okay? But there's all this other stuff that's really complex on the back end. Well, that's what we have to do with all this data that we're now mining from all this equipment, right? We have to siphon through it all and make it easy to understand. And I think once we can do that, and we can do it with everything, right? And we can store it up in the cloud, and we can easily integrate stuff, and then package that up with an SLA. For me as an integrator, that's what's gonna sell, right? But then, of course, like you said, I have to find the person to then sell that. I think that's the most striking part of articles like this is kind of determining all of that. As far as 5G goes, 5G is great. We all love speed, more speed, right? Give me more speed. I'll take it. I'm waiting for 6G.
Well,
I'm already there.
Don't get ahead of yourself here. Do you think in whether it's your organization or other organizations, do you think it is a generational thing? I mean, we all, the Clint's cartoon is probably apt, but do you think that's what it is wrapping your head around the idea of whether it's selling a service level agreement, selling recurring revenue, commercial integrator and SCN and Sound and Communications, and we've talked about selling recurring revenue for years. The reason that they keep writing articles about it is because there's still a boatload of people who just haven't done it yet, right?
It's exhausting reading about it. Yeah.
But that's the thing is that there are dealers who simply, I'm not going to say put their head in their sand, but simply don't get it, or just say, you know what, that's not for me, right? My dad sold three gun Barcos. I sell Barcos. It's what we've done as a company. Is that the thing where it's getting the younger salespeople and the younger engineers on board with both recurring revenue and service level agreements and selling the asset management stuff?
I don't know if this is 100% true, but I think this is going to be driven by the manufacturers, and I don't know that it's generational. I think it's just a mindset. Now, granted, mindset ties in with generation much of the time, but I consider myself fairly younger, even though my recent birthday would disagree with you, and I'm bald by choice, not by force. So I would say that, for me, it's just because of the way I was brought up by traditional people. That's how I know to design, how I know to sell. And the tools were not available for this data collection and data mining. So now that it's available, I think that, yes, the younger generation is going to embrace this more because that's all that they're going to know, right? Versus us who are in the middle, who are trying to figure out how we're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? I think once that embracement happens from the younger generation, is in conjunction with what the manufacturers are going to be pushing and allowing and helping to make a lot of that back-end programming and cloud integration and apps and all that stuff work and make things less proprietary and more agnostic. I think as that trend kind of pushes forward, we're going to see a major shift in this stuff, right? Because we all know, like we said, we said it exhaustively. We don't make money on equipment anymore unless you're lucky, and so we need to embrace it. We need to figure out how.
One of the things, Tim, that I tell the integrators that I work with on a regular basis, especially when I'm dealing with the salespeople, is listen, bring me in or bring in the manufacturer. Let us help you. If you're not confident in being able to sell this, bring us in. They will come in. They will set up and show and do a dog and pony and talk about the integration and answer their IT questions. They'll do all of that for you and help you close that sale. But that's not the mentality. The mentality is I got to go in, I got this bill of materials, this is what I'm pushing. I would tell any salesperson, reach back to the manufacturers and they will help. And if they don't, then you know where you stand with that manufacturer. But almost all of them will be happy to go in and share and show with you to get that added value into your system.
It's not just the integration, though, too. It's the end users, right? The end users a lot of them are traditionally old school, right? Yeah. Just like we are in integration. Some people from integration move into being end users. I mean, there's this whole shift. It's a small industry, right? So we all, it's hard to embrace it if no matter what you're an end user, integrator, it doesn't matter, right? If you're used to a certain way of doing things, that's the way it's going to be done. So yes, I think we're going to see a shift. It's going to be driven by manufacturing. It's going to have to be embraced by end users. And you're right, you have to bring in the manufacturers and the people who know it in order to sell it and to get the end users to adopt it. And I think once all that lines up, in the perfect world of AV stars, which is hopefully coming soon, I think that we'll see that big transition.
Let me add this. Go ahead.
I think it's also a bit of a cart and a horse issue because if you own an integration firm like you do, Jeremy, it's historically been a project-based business. Okay, how many projects do I have that I suspect I can get in 2020? I can make a budget and then I can make payroll every other Friday. And wouldn't it be better to say, hey, my budget for 2020 is starting with this many SLAs, this much guaranteed money coming in, and then I can go find some projects to augment that. So I think most integration firm owners want it, but they got a bunch of people working for them who need to get that project done and get the next one designed and done, and they know how to do it around oversimplification around a great big matrix switcher. They don't know how to do it in a different kind of way yet. So it's kind of a cart and a horse issue, but I think you're right. We're going to get there. It's just
all right, guys. We'll wrap up today with another story from Center Communications and Joseph Valerio. Joseph writes about the AVIXA Foundation and their efforts in workforce. Found it interesting as we kind of wrapped around and into that last conversation talking about generation. Joseph writes, most students already have many of the skills required to get started in an AV career. The next step is simply to enhance what they already know. Mark, I'm going to start with you on this, and we're just kind of going to go around the horn real quickly, guys. If you were talking with either a high school student or somebody in college, and they were interested in technology or they're interested in music or what have you, how would you go about getting them hooked into or connected to the industry?
I take them behind the scenes, to be honest with you. I'd love to take a student to the LA Emergency Operations Center and go in there and see 40 displays up on the wall and cameras all over the place, all over the city, and the way that we tie it all together and we can communicate it and pass information from one place to the other and really see what we do. They need to. There's two things that for me they need to see what we do behind the scenes. You can't just take them and show them an 80-inch display and go, look, aren't we cool? You can't even show them a wireless device that you could walk in and send data up to and make a presentation. They don't care. Right? What they care about is being able to be challenged in what it is that they do. And the way to challenge them is to show them the back end of what we do. Let's go to the racks. Let's go to the building material. Let's go into that portion of it. Let's dive into the programming. Let's see what we can do. That always tends to jazz them up quite a bit. And the other part of it is, which is something I've talked about recently, which is I challenge any industry in our country to show a greater growth of entrepreneurs and in business owners than our business does. We're a lot of us are business owners out of necessity or out of desperation, right? I can't do this anymore. I think I have a better way. I'm going to go do it. But you look at the number of companies that are run right now in our business by people who were pulling cables just 10 years ago. There's a big push towards integration companies, not from a sales hardware standpoint, but they're saying, look, you have an overflow. So I've got the people who can build the racks and bring it out to the job site and get it on the network and commission that system for you, but I'm not going to buy and sell hardware. There's a big jump in those type of businesses right now. And those are people who were cable pullers and they were field service engineers and they saw a better way. Any person that's interested in our business, that's got to be something we push, and we don't push it near enough.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, same kind of question. How do you get young people connected to and interested in the AV industry?
It goes in conjunction with what he said. It's the wow factor, right? I mean, how do we just let them experience what it is that we do, right? Whether it's if they, you first got to find what they're interested in. If they're interested in programming, show them that. If they're interested in just cool technology, show them, whatever, the behind the scenes. I mean, that's what it is. Because like he said, you know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, hey, we got this cool wireless stuff. We can send my phone from here to here. And they're like, oh yeah, like I'm already doing, and they've already figured it out and they've done it before I've even showed them the app, you know what I mean? Or whatever, right? I mean, they're gonna know the technology. They're gonna embrace the technology. But it's the behind the scenes. It's what we do that's complex that makes it seem simple over here, right? And being involved in figuring that out, I think that's the draw.
All right. Clint, you'll have the last word on this. How do we get young people involved?
Yeah, this is such a big challenge because there's no college curriculum for pro AV. It's either radio, television, film, theater, music. You mentioned so many of the people that are in our industry were previously musicians or something like that. And because of that, I had the privilege of serving on the ICI, at the time ICI, now AVIXA Foundation Board. And we used to give out the scholarships for folks who wanted to come into the industry. And we get like 100 applications a year, and we go through them. And nobody knew what the pro AV was. It was, I'm going to be a theater major. I'm going to write computer games. I'm going to, make movies. And, you come here when you're 18 or 19 or 20 and you suddenly realize I'm not going to be a director in Hollywood, then you find your way to the AV industry. So it's a real challenge, but both Mark and Jeremy have nailed it. Once that person's in that mindset that I'm not going to be a famous actor, or I'm not going to be a movie star or a rock star, it's like, hey, take a look at what we do, and they're like, wow, that's really cool, and then we got them. So but it is a challenge.
I went to Columbia College in Chicago long before I ever taught there, or was lucky enough to be on their board, right? And in my first class, my freshman year, they said, 100 students, how many people are here for live sound? They want to, mix the next band. You get 60 kids. And how many here want to be the next recording artist? You get 30 kids, right? And you get how many here are to do installed sound? And I was one of the lucky few that made that weird decision in college, right? And there were a couple of us raised our hand, and they said, okay, the rest of you are going to be doing what they do. Right. And it was true, because once they realized they weren't that recording engineer, they weren't the next front of house guy, and they were going to have terrible hours and terrible pay. And by the way, you want to be the recording engineer, but how about, do you want to design the recording studio? Does that interest you anymore? Because that, showing people behind the scenes of that would draw them into then our side of the house. So I completely agree.
Yeah, the old joke in our industry is you go to a family picnic and somebody says, what do you do for a living? And you're like, well, I do professional AV. And they're like, oh, like Best Buy? And no, nobody knows what the pro AV industry except us.
No, I will still steal Rich Fregosa's line. He's a VCR repairman and has been for 30 years. So, all right. On that note, gentlemen, thank you so much. Mr. Caldera, how do people find you or IAS?
IAStechnology.net, Jeremy_Caldera on the Twitter. And that's it.
All right, very good. Mr. Clint Hoffman, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you. You can find us at www.kramerav.com.
All right, very good. And Mr. LeVecchia, how do people find you or BMA?
Ask around. There's a couple of this ask around. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I mean, it's ask we're word of mouth. I've got a website, bmasoftwaresolutions.com. I have a Twitter handle, but it's not very active.
Go to Jackson Hole and head a little northwest.
Yeah, that's right. You come up to Coeur d'Alene, and we'll get on the lake, and I'll tell you about my company.
All right, very good. For me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That is AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our supporter section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and coverage of CEDIA 2019, and Kramer is one of those, and we thank them for their support. I mentioned CEDIA. It happens the 12th through the 14th of September. The reason I mention it, yes, it's a residential show, but even if you're in the commercial industry, AV industry, you need to pay attention because a whole lot of interesting things come out of there. I will point to Dallas 3 years ago when voice control made a huge splash, and yes, it will. If it hasn't hit your boardrooms yet, it will. You'll at least be asked for it. How about that? So yeah, pay attention to CEDIA here in about 3 or 4 weeks. Also, while you're there, check out State of Control, which Mark is on, and also have a brand new digital signage digest coming down the pipe this week. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.